Friday, September 13th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we explain in layman's terms, to the best of our ability, the Creative Commons.
Let's do this.
Man, so now that I got headphones that aren't crappy, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and a lot of music.
Was that what was holding you back?
And the thing is, I'm not listening to any more podcasts. I'm just listening to more episodes of the ones I currently listen to.
Yeah, but I'm not listening to that many podcasts either. But I've always pretty much kept up with the one. With most of the ones I do.
I did until I stopped driving to work. There was kind of this lead time now where I was taking the train to work, but I didn't have good headphones, so I read manga and stuff and played GBA games.
Oh, so that was it then. It was my combination of driving or training plus having headphones. So it was any time the podcasts were in the house, even at work with the computer at work, I was getting the podcast going on. So
yep. Though the thing is, I was listening to a podcast that's awesome that I haven't listened to in a while called Derek the Bandit's Sound Republic, which I highly recommend if you like trance.
Or any sort of electronic music from South Africa and the world.
And the letter Z.
Soundrepublic.co.za.
But anyway, this stood out so much that I really have to say something about it because it bothered me. So he has kind of ad-like things every now and then, like blah, 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 he'll talk, and I kind of just ignore him like I do any DJ. But then in the middle of his mix, he played this promo for some podcast, and one, the audio quality of this promo was really bad, and two, the podcast sounded really crappy.
See, that's really not so bad when you've listened to all his episodes, because early on in his podcasting days, he made a deal with this video game magazine in South Africa.
Now, this video game magazine, we don't know if it was good or not, but the ads it made, and not the ads, the content. It was like, we're going to review this game on Derek the Bandit's Sound Republic.
Well, the deal he made is he thought that in order to get popular, he made a deal with them that they would put his podcast on the CD that came with the magazine. And in exchange, they would do a small audio bit, 5 or 10 minutes of video game talk, and he would put it in the podcast.
It was terrible.
It really ruined it because you were listening to this trance mix, and then suddenly there's 5 to 10 minutes of stupid video game guys talking with bad audio.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't be so bad because the content wasn't horrible. It was just that the audio quality was so terrible that I couldn't listen. I just had to stop.
Yep.
And he's doing it again with some crap podcast.
Well, because he's sort of part of the pod show thing with the MTV guy, and Dvorak now works over there, and their PodSafe Music Network crap, and yeah, so that's where that whole sort of culture of podcasting with the promos and the PodSafe music comes from.
More and more, I just don't like podcasting, except my show and then a few other shows.
Well, it's pretty much like any podcast is sort of in with that, sort of like podcasting, I don't know what you want to call it, dogma maybe, that those guys have set up. I really don't like it.
Maybe we should do that. We should call these different movements like film people and music people do. That's dogma now.
Maybe.
We'll call that dogma. And what we do is, I don't know, awesome?
Okay, sure. Whatever.
Doesn't matter. It stood out so horribly. And, I mean, it stands out in, other podcasts I listen to when they do it, but the disparity of quality between the normal show of, awesome music and this promo, which sounded like they record over Skype, was just, All
right. So, I got a sports news and a sports thing of the day today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, real sports, too, not like,
Oh, so air hockey.
No, yeah, exactly.
Ping pong.
Yes.
Thumb wrestling.
So this is probably, anyone who knows about American football knows everything there is to know about this already. But I wanna bring a new perspective to the table that I have not heard expressed in any other media. So the New England Patriots, a football team that has been quite good this season and many seasons this season 1 game so far, but they've been really good for many years, and they're going to remain being good. They might even win the Super Bowl this year. Who knows?
I'll be honest, I had no idea. I don't even really know what that team is.
I mean, a lot of people who might know that, my favorite team is the Giants, and my second favorite team is the Patriots, and my most hated team is the Jets, and my second most hated team is the Eagles. They might be like, you're just saying what you're about to say because you like the Patriots and you hate the Jets when the game happened to be a Patriots versus Jet game. But no, that's not the case because Rim, I think, will agree with me despite his not giving two shits about football.
I care a little bit. A family tradition, in as long as I've been
Lions,
alive.
it doesn't count.
The Lions.
Lions don't count. They're not even a football team.
The
They
Lions.
don't qualify as a football team.
The thing is, there's something special about every Thanksgiving. My family sits around
And watches the Lions lose.
No, it's not watch them lose. It's watch them win. Watch them just soundly defeat another team and then fuck it up in the last 3 minutes somehow and lose the game.
That's the New York Giants. What are you talking about? So, yeah. So, New England Patriots playing the Jets, right? And in football, you have these people on the sidelines, the coaches and the coordinators of offense and defense, and they have to tell the players what play they want them to do. Do a nickel defense, or do some play action, whatever, or fake this punt, right? And in order to communicate with the players, right, the coach will usually just talk to the quarterback, maybe with like a headset, something, right? And then the quarterback will get in the huddle and tell the team what to do. Well, on defense, there is no sort of quarterback on the field to tell everyone what to do. There's just all these sort of equal players. So the defensive coordinator on the sidelines, will use some sort of signaling of some sort to tell the defense what to do sometimes, when they don't have a chance to just, come over and talk. So, of course, you're playing a game like this. People are going to look at the other team's signals and, figure them out. And sometimes, you're sitting there playing a game and you might notice, hey, that guy's done like a T with his hands and then wiped his brow. And every time he did that, they did this defensive play.
Yeah, like every time he throws the shocker up, we know.
Yep. So some, people notice coincidences like that, and then they'll tell their coach, and then they'll get, a little edge in the game. The New England Patriots, not being complete dumbasses, videotaped the other teams. They like apologized for it. They did it. They caught red-handed, whatever. They videotaped the other team's signals to figure them out. And that is against the written rules of the NFL. So, on the one hand, they broke the rules, they cheated on paper, and they got punished for it, which I guess is the right thing to do. You break the rules, you face the consequences. However, I don't think that should be against the rules.
I have to agree. Anytime there is publicly available information, making an arbitrary rule to make this information no longer publicly available arbitrarily, I said that twice, they could have gotten this information cheating like this and not gotten caught. Hire a hobo to film it and then get the tape from him.
Yeah, it's really dumb. And you're basically asking someone, all right, there's a way that you can get an advantage in this game, but we're basically going to arbitrarily decide that you cannot gain this advantage that's standing right in front of you.
And it's not like we're going to arbitrarily say you can't carry a spanner with you on the field. It's like we're going to arbitrarily say that you can't look at that thing that you're looking at.
Yeah. Now, the real reason I have a problem with this is that basically looking at the signals is not against the rules, but videotaping them is. Well, why are they still using signals like this? Why don't they just install headphones in every player's helmet and have encrypted radio broadcasts from the sidelines? End of story. No one can possibly break the encryption. No videotape is going to help you. No one can possibly hear what you're telling the players. That's it. End of story. The only thing you could possibly do at that point is to steal the other team's helmet or something, or, have a spy on their team, who's got a job working for them.
Wow. You know what? Having a spy on your rival football team's team is a lot like having a character in an MMO in the enemy guild.
Yeah. And, getting caught with that's actually, pretty serious stuff that is not arbitrary to block, So, yeah, I think this whole thing's kind of dumb. I think that if you don't want people seeing your hand signals, don't use stupid hand signals. Technology exists.
It's kind of like when a company opens up an API on the web for something, and then as soon as someone uses it for something they don't like, they scream and bitch and piss and moan instead of just not letting the API do things they don't want people to do.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So the EU... I'm pretty neutral on the EU. I generally thought it was a good idea, but at the same I'm not going to get into my opinion of the EU. But a man who is very influential on the EU, he is the EU Justice and Security Commissioner. His name is Franco Frattini. Mm-hmm. Franco Frattini is from Italy. I'll get into him in a second. Is basically saying that the EU should block from the internet all bomb-making material instructions, and furthermore, not let people search for terms such as bomb, kill, genocide, or terrorism.
Wait, genocide? So I can't, if I have to do a report on,
Actually, Scott, there's already a lot of laws like that in Germany where you just can't talk about Nazis in certain ways, and you can't have certain books about them just because they have a lot of legacy laws.
Yeah, but those laws are mostly, I mean, I know about those laws, and I don't like them, because, they're anti-freedom, but a lot of them are specifically to, block people from being Nazis, but, they still learn about Nazis in school, and you can, still get
We were all
access
on
to
vacation. Nothing bad happened.
Yeah, exactly. No,
basically, what this guy is saying that the EU, in order to prevent terror, should prevent anyone in the EU from knowing about terrorism.
Oh God, this guy.
This guy. It doesn't end there. I mean, this is crazy, and I could go on and on about all the details and the stupid things this guy has said, but the rabbit hole's a little bit deeper. Apparently, this is the same guy who was trying to get rid of violent video games in the EU.
How old is this guy? I'm betting over 70.
He was born in 1957.
Oh, he's younger than my mom, actually.
He looks like a normal kind of guy.
But he sounds like a cranky old man who is totally out of touch with the world and doesn't understand things.
Well, apparently...
He doesn't understand security. He doesn't understand culture. He doesn't understand information. He doesn't understand technology.
Yeah, well, he's the vice president of the European Commission for Justice, Freedom, and Security. And apparently he's against freedom.
He's against freedom. He thinks that something that will provide security that won't. And he doesn't know the meaning of justice.
Now, even funnier, I looked up the Wikipedia to find out more about this dude, and apparently he's also a Freemason.
All right, that doesn't mean anything.
Because he was outed as a Freemason by the guy who he replaced.
It doesn't mean
who
anything.
himself was controversial for some reason.
Well, this guy, I'm thinking, is pretty well, he's not really controversial. There is no controversy.
Well, no.
The guy is wrong. End of story.
The previous guy was controversial because he was a Roman Catholic. So then, to get this guy...
This guy's not Catholic. He's Italian.
I guess he's... For some reason...
Obviously not every Italian is Catholic, but most of them are. So that's kind of weird.
Well, the more I read about all these people, and there's like this cluster of just weird, stupid, crazy politics in the EU, and it all kind of, there's the circle jerk of all this, and this guy is kind of a spoke sticking right out of the center of it.
Yeah,
and he's crazy, and he's dumb. But what I would like to point out...
Even if the EU is entirely comprised of kooky old men, and they all decide this is a good idea, it's unenforceable, and maybe they'll give them a fucking wake-up call.
Well, you know how they could do it? They could simply...
be like China?
Yeah.
And then everyone will just say, hey... You're like China, and maybe they'd feel bad.
I don't think they'd even realize what that meant. But I'd just like to point out that way back in the day, I was online long before I was on the internet. And there was a time in my life where I'd log into Prodigy or a friend's AOL, and I'd think, man, I always hear about the internet, but I want to be on it. How do I get on it? I wasn't sure how that worked.
Me either.
And one day, I got a service, and I paid, and I was on the internet, and my whole family and all of our friends and my grandparents, everyone were in the house, and we're sitting around the computer, and I dialed in, and I connected for the first time of anyone in our family to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I did was type into the search bar, bomb making instructions. Because I'd heard that stuff like that was on the internet, and I was really curious, and you know what? The first 4 links were 404s, but the 5th one was a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I didn't make a bomb, and I didn't blow anything up.
At the library, you can get the Anarchist Cookbook. Oh, no!
The Anarchist Cookbook recipes mostly are flawed and will kill you.
I know.
It's a terrible book.
Oh, noes. You gotta ban that. Ban that
Actually,
book.
a lot of libraries don't carry it either.
It was in the library I was at once.
It's a really shitty book.
It is really shitty, but it's infamous, and it's bomb-making instructions.
Oh, snap!
Panic, everybody. Save the kids, the children.
Things of the day.
Now, I said my news and my thing that they were both sports-related, and they are.
It's very rare for me to hear the term sports-related without hearing the word injury right after that.
Yeah, I know, isn't it?
I expected you to say it, today's sports-related injury.
Sadly, or happily, depending on your point of view, this does not involve a sports-related injury.
Not like back when we had Hockey Fight Week.
No. So, if you've been paying attention at all, I'm a fan of the Formula One racing. There's actually been some crazy stuff going on in the Formula One racing this season. You know, some disqualification from the Constructors' Cup by McLaren and such for craziness, but not going to get into that. You may know that the greatest driver of cars to ever live as a human being is a man named Michael Schumacher, and he still lives. And this is like the first season in a long time where he has not been an F1 driver, and he won more championships in F1 than anyone has ever won, and more than likely anyone ever will win.
Yep. I mean, not only does he live, but he hungers.
Yes. I mean, sure, he often drove a car that was faster than everyone else's car, but when you look at it, you know, there was at least one other person each year driving the same car as him, and he was always faster than they were.
And not just like always faster, like by a tiny amount. He was always consistently a lot faster.
Right. Now, you might think, you know, you see someone like Tiger Woods play golf, and you see someone like Roger Federer play tennis, and they're just so much better than everyone else. But it'd be really interesting, but in some ways also demystifying and disappointing, to use, like, you know, scientific data to figure out exactly why or how they are so much better than everyone else.
I mean, this is like, say you figured out that, I'm making this up, obviously, but Lance Armstrong, the only reason he was better at bicycling was because by a genetic whatever, one of his ligaments was 1 centimeter longer than normal or something like that.
Well, isn't it because genetically he had humongous lungs?
He had humongous lungs, and he was...
has humongous lungs. He's not dead.
Yeah, well, also, there was the fact that I believe he lost one or both testicles. I think one to cancer. So he takes testosterone supplements, but because it was for a medical thing, it was legal.
I think he only took them for some time.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't say for sure because I don't follow bicycle racing at all.
It was mostly his huge lungs. He was good at bicycling before he had cancer.
He was an amazing bicyclist long before all that.
But anyway, you know, you always see these people and you wonder what makes them better. And you look at someone like Michael Schumacher, where a lot of it is the car. You know, not all of it, but a lot of it's the car. I mean, I could beat him in a race if he had a Ford Pinto and I had a Ferrari. He's not that good.
Well, then again, it depends, because in a race like that, you might crash.
I might. But regardless,
he's going to take that Pinto as fast as it can go.
He was, and probably still is, the greatest driver of cars ever, and he was faster than everyone else. And here's a video that explains in somewhat, I guess... It's sort of demystifying in a way, because it shows you why he was faster than everyone else, and it's kind of sad because now, like, sort of like the mystique goes away, and you're like, oh, that's how he did it.
And it's not even like a commentary of, oh, well, because of blah and blah and blah, subjective. It was like, here are the absolute graphs of this and that and that, and here's...
Yeah, they have something called telemetry, which is, on all the F1 cars, they have all sorts of sensors, like, monitoring everything in the car. Like, every piece of data they can get about the car, the temperatures in different parts of the car, the vibrations, exactly how far you're pressing the gas pedal at any time, exactly how much braking you're putting on, the temperature of the brakes, the temperature of the tires, the pressure in the tires, you know, how much you're steering. Everything is measured and sent to a computer. So they looked at the throttle control, the brake control, and the steering, and also the gear shifting of Michael Schumacher driving through the same part of the same racetrack as someone else. And basically, he steps on the gas, you know, more gradually and more controlledly than the other people. But at the same time, this sort of, you know, puts the car on edge, and he has to make a lot more corrections in his steering. So basically, he's like steering like a madman, and the other guy is, you know, braking a lot more so that he can steer nicely through the turn. But as a result, Schumacher goes through faster and doesn't lose as much speed and gains the speed right back when he exits the turn.
I mean, basically, the theory of driving a car around a corner fast is simply that there is, for any given car and situation, an absolute, perfect, most optimal way to get a car around a corner.
Yep, I mean, if you go too fast, the car will fly off the road and crash and you'll die.
And if you go too slow, you could have gone faster. There is an absolute physical limit. And theoretically, if you had enough information, you could calculate that limit exactly for every single second.
As long as you accounted for every possible, you know, factor.
Yeah,
there's some factors
theoretically
that you can't, you know, account for, like a gust of wind or something like that, you know.
And the primary difference between, like, say, me going around a corner and a guy who's actually raced cars going around a corner, if we're both trying to go around as fast as we can, is that the closer you get to that optimal line, the less margin for error you have. I mean, say I'm, I don't know, 20 foo units away from the absolute point where my car will spin out and there's no way I can prevent that, where I will lose traction no matter what. And I can't get closer than that because I don't know how, like, I'll crash. I won't be able to control the car. I won't be able to make the fine corrections.
Or you don't have the balls to step on the gas.
A lot of it is balls.
You don't have the balls to, step on the brake a half a second later.
Or it's also, I'm not as experienced, so if the car goes out of control, it takes me longer to react to it, and I don't react as well, so I need more of a margin.
Especially when the car is going 200 plus kilometers an hour.
So as a result, someone like me needs a much higher margin of safety where I'll have time to correct and fix my problem and not die. Michael Schumacher, it drives so close to that edge that it's great when you look at the graph of his steering versus the other people. The slower people steer much less, like they've got it under control and they're just going. He's so close to crashing at any second that he's constantly going left, right, left, right, left, right,
Yeah, he's basically wrestling the car to go when he's pushed it to the absolute limit, perhaps over the limit of the car.
I mean, the deal is if the other driver, like, say, had sneezed or something, they'd have a much better chance of surviving than Michael Schumacher, just because of the fact that he's so close to the edge that any disturbance of his car will immediately make him crash.
Possibly, but he didn't crash so much. I mean,
No.
he didn't crash 0 times. He drove fast. I mean, they show you him going around this turn, right? He goes around the turn 0.1 seconds faster than the other guy. All right, 60 laps times how many turns, depending on what track they're racing at, times 0.1 seconds. He'll finish the race minutes before the other guy.
The only thing that prevents that is that it's not that easy to pass in F1.
Well, it depends on what year, what cars, what track.
Modern F1 in general, there's not a whole lot of passing except at the very beginning of the race and then
but no matter,
at the critical,
no
pit
matter what
junctures.
F1 you're talking about, it's not easy to pass Michael Schumacher.
Well, it's pretty much, once he passes someone, he's immediately on the next guy's ass.
Yep.
Like, that's just it. As soon as he passes you, you're done. And he ignores you.
Yep.
Unless there's a pit issue.
Actually, one other thing I like about this video is at the very beginning they have like a sky cam, like, filming a car driving around the track.
That was really cool.
It's very hard when watching a car race on TV to really get the sensation of speed and how fast the cars are going. Like, you watch NASCAR on TV and it's just like, they don't look like they're going that fast. I went to see NASCAR in person a long time ago, like when I was in middle school or so, and it's really fast, and F1 is like 50% faster than that. It's crazy, but you really can't tell. But this video at the very beginning, it's the best video I've ever seen that really gives you a sensation of how fast they're going, because they're going hella fast, goddamn.
So, for once, I don't have a YouTube video.
Hooray!
Apparently, there's a kind of lion called an Asiatic lion.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say a liger.
No, though there is a story.
An Asiatic liger?
When I was living in Michigan in Sterling Heights, a liger actually escaped in the area, and for like 2 weeks. They had police watching kids coming home from school and generally patrolling, and kids were supposed to stay out of the woods because there was a liger somewhere in Sterling Heights.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so Asiatic lions are super endangered. There's like 350 of them left in the world, and all of them are in one forest in India.
Mm-hmm.
And the long story short is that they're still not doing so well, and poachers are getting them and stuff.
What do they want them for?
I don't know. I didn't really focus on
Like,
that.
I can understand poachers going after elephants because you can make stuff out of ivory, and I understand poachers going after whales because you can make anything out of whales.
Well, a lot of people in certain Asian countries believe that tiger anything is an aphrodisiac or a medicine.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
See, it's one thing. I generally really don't like poaching anyway, but it's one thing if you kill an animal to make a piano out of its teeth. If you kill an animal to make fake medicine out of it, that's, like, it bothers me on multiple levels. It's like, not only are you doing something stupid, but you're doing it in order to do something stupider.
It's weird, because I really like that aesthetic of, like, Teddy Roosevelt hunting in Africa safari kind of action, but I don't actually like hunting in Africa safari action.
See, at least with the old...
Dr. Livingston, I presume?
I could respect it more when there's a chance that the animal's gonna win and kill you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like if bullfighting were a 50-50 shot, I'd probably be a lot less against bullfighting.
Yeah.
Granted, bullfighting is actually kind of dumb to watch, and despite I like Hemingway, but bullfighting is not cool the way Hemingway tries to make it out to
The
be.
aesthetic of bullfighting, again, is cool. Actual bullfighting is lame. It should be a fight. You versus the bull. Who wins? We don't know.
I would root for the bull. But anyway, so
Yeah,
I'm not
because
gonna.
watching guys get gored is definitely more entertaining than
Well, because they totally deserve it.
they do.
Anyway, so I didn't
Wearing those
focus
clothes.
on all that part of the. Basically, the heart of this issue is that there is little baby Tejas, and he is a hand-reared Asiatic lion baby that they are raising in order to breed and repopulate the species. And there are two pictures of little Tejas. One is his handler feeding him milk from a bottle, and it's adorable. And two is him looking a little bit like our friend Conrad when he wakes up in the morning, sitting next to a stuffed tiger.
Uh-huh.
This is so cute. I would give almost anything in the world to be able to pet and play with this little baby lion.
I think it might bite you.
No, it wouldn't, because it's really cute, and it obviously
Cute
things can't
bite.
hurt you. Actually, no. I mean, while it wouldn't be domesticated or domesticatable the way domesticated animals are, a hand-reared lion like that would be generally friendly toward people, especially a baby.
But then how? That's the thing I don't understand. I guess maybe because I'm not a zoologist, but if you raise it domesticated, how are you gonna eventually put them back in the wild? They won't be the same.
I'm not sure. I believe in this case they're not going to put Tejas back in the wild. They're going to breed Tejas.
So they're just gonna have him make a bunch of babies and put them all out put the babies out in the wild,
Something like
with
that.
no one to take care of them.
Well, they probably breed them with wild ones. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do. All I know is this sort of thing is often successful.
What they should do is they should train them while they're in domesticated to eat poachers, and then
Nah.
have a little stuffed Teddy Roosevelt there with a safari hat.
Plus, honestly,
and train it to bite him, and then
from what
put
I've
them back in
read,
the wild.
a lot of the things are actually instinctual, and they'll take to the wild much better than you'd expect.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like because they're not bred for domestication. Like domesticated dogs actually are. You really can't let them be feral easily because they're so modified through centuries and centuries and centuries of breeding by humans.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it. These pictures are really cute. I expect to see more pictures of baby Tejas.
All right, today we're going to talk about something that a lot of people seem to be confused about.
Well, one person in our forum
Well,
was...
no, because see, I thought about doing a show on it a while ago, and then someone reminded us, and I get emails pretty much like clockwork every few weeks or so asking about it, and people just don't seem to understand, or they totally don't get what's going on here, and I think it requires an episode of explanation, and this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk about the Creative Commons that we note at the end of our show. If you've ever listened all the way to the end, we say
Geeknights is released under Creative Commons 2.5 Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike license.
yes. So what the hell is the Creative Commons? All right, basically,
Maybe we should start with copyright.
that's what I'm doing.
All right.
So, in the United States, and most of the rest of the world also, you have copyright, which is a law that prevents creative works from being copied. So, if you make a song, someone else takes that song and copies it and sells that copy, they can't do that. And the way the copyright law is written right now is that
In the United States, we're not going to talk
in the
about...
United States, but it's also most of the modern world has very similar laws.
Yeah, but at the same time, look up your own laws. We can only really speak with any authority about the way things are in the U.S.
Yeah, but the vast majority of Europe is sort of the same way, and there's only very small differences usually, like in terms of the number of years.
Let's
or
go to China and see
things
how you
about
feel.
China, yeah, okay. But the way it works is, let's say Rim makes a song. Rim, you made a song?
Da-da-ba-ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da-da.
Right. Now, without doing anything, he did nothing. That song he just made is automatically copyrighted.
Yeah, you don't have to register your copyright. You don't have to write a letter. You don't have to... all you have to do, if you write something down on a piece of paper, a short story on a napkin, it's copyrighted.
Technically and legally, but you might have a harder time defending it in court if you if you register it. That means it'll be easier to defend in court if you ever get sued or want to sue somebody. But it's technically, by the law, copyrighted as soon as you make a creative work. If you write a page of a book, copyrighted automatically. Make a web page, copyrighted automatically.
Now, what
as long as you didn't infringe on someone else's copyright when you made it.
Now, what does this mean? I mean, it's actually very simple. Once you make a work and it is covered and protected by copyright, that means that by default, no one else in the world has the right to use your work in any way except in a narrow band of exceptions known colloquially as fair use.
So if I make a song and people want to remix it and I don't do anything, I just put my song on an MP3 on the internet, right? I don't do anything. They're not allowed to even download the song technically. They're not allowed to freaking play the song, at a concert. They're not allowed to.
Well, no, by putting it in a public place, as best I know, there is an implied right to consume it, but no right to redistribute it.
Yeah, so they can't give a copy to their friends. They can't make a remix. They can't do anything unless I have to give permission in some way. I have to do something to allow people to do something. By default, they can do nothing. So I have to explicitly say, okay, you can use it. They have to ask me for permission. I have to say something in order for them to be allowed to do something with my art, or else it's illegal for them to do anything.
And, I mean, there's more complicated bits and pieces, but that's the gist of it, and that's all that matters for our discussion tonight.
Yep. So what is the Creative Commons? Well, right now, because the copyright law is the way it is, and we don't like it, there's still a solution to the problem. We want copyright, right? I guess ideally, to be by default less restrictive than it is. However, there's no reason why people who make works of art can't go out and just get rid of these restrictions. I mean, I'm allowed, if I make a work of art, I can just say all the restrictions are gone. I can do that.
Yeah, or I mean, just by default, you give people nothing and you keep all the rights. You might see people say things sometimes like blah, 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 all rights reserved.
Right. Well, the point of Creative Commons is that some rights are reserved. When you make a work of art, you go to the Creative Commons website and you pick out under what terms you want to give away that work. I mean, let's say I'm willing to have my artwork. I made a painting, and I'm willing to have people share that painting with the whole world, share it with all their friends. I don't care. They can remix it. They can do whatever they want, as long as they say that it was by me. They can't be like, oh yeah, I'm Joe. I made this painting that Scott actually made. They have to give me credit. And if that's all I want, I can use a Creative Commons attribution license. And that basically says I give up all my copyright restrictions except for attribution.
Now, I believe they've recently, or somewhat recently, remade it so that there's no non-attribution license available on the site.
Well, you can use the public domain. You can choose public domain, which means anything goes.
Yeah, well, that's a little, I think that's a little bit different technically than a non-attribution Creative Commons.
Yes.
But not really.
Not really. The point of this is that until now, without Creative Commons, if you wanted to do something like this, you needed a lawyer. If you wanted to use someone else's artwork, you needed a lawyer.
Yeah, you might think common sense. All right, I'll put my thing up and I'll just say on the website, hey, anyone can use this however they want, but you can't use it in, Nazi propaganda because I don't like Nazis. Because you're not a lawyer and you didn't write that, whatever you wrote on your website, perfectly, if someone really wanted to break your license, they probably could if they had a lawyer.
At the same time, if someone put someone was using some artwork and let's say they put it on their website and they didn't say anything or they had pretty vague talking, and they didn't have legal text, and you went and remixed it thinking that was okay based on what they said, if they had a lawyer, they could probably sue you and get you as a copyright infringer.
Yeah, the deal with Creative Commons is very simply, it's a standard way to relinquish or modify many of your inherent rights to copyright without having to get a lawyer. It's a standard boilerplate license. You basically say, I want to use Creative Commons. You pick a bunch of options. They're kind of like modules of the Creative Commons. And that's it. And they give you the shortened version, this is what it means in layman's talk. But actually, linked from that is the legal, written by lawyers, tested in courts. This is the actual license we're using.
Yep. And so usually, when someone on the internet made something, let's say they make a webcomic and you want to remix the webcomic, usually you're nice and you go and you ask them permission. You say, hey, can I remix your webcomic? I get a lot of emails that I'm talking about here. Oh, can we put your podcast in our show? I want to take a piece of Geeknights and put it in my podcast.
Yep. At one point, Scott had someone ask if they could use content he made from, I think, his audio blog way back in the day in a techno song or something.
Yeah, I think someone does right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I just remember that because you told me that, and I was like, wow.
That was
what
weird.
Kind of techno song is that?
I don't know. I forgot about it, but I'll have to go look for it again.
Yeah.
But basically, the Creative Commons is, by default, with the default laws where all rights are automatically reserved, even if you don't want them to be reserved, people have to ask permission. The point of Creative Commons is that we come out and we say, look, don't ask permission. If you follow these rules, you don't have to ask. You do not have to ask. Don't ask me. Just read the license and follow the rules. Now, if you don't want to follow all the rules of the license, because, we have picked an attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives license. So let's say you wanted to remix Geeknights in a commercial way. Well, actually, share alike, not no derivatives. But if you wanted to remix Geeknights in a non-commercial way, you'd have to ask.
Well, in a commercial way, not in a non-commercial way.
Right. God. Okay, so let's talk about what all the different licenses you have to choose from. We already talked about attribution.
Yeah, that's Rim made this.
Yes, you can't go around saying, yeah, this song, it's not by Led Zeppelin, it's by Scott Rubin. Right, sure. You have to give credit where credit is due. And other than that, you can do whatever you want. You can remix, tweak, add on, take away, share with all your friends, do whatever the hell you want with it, as long as you give credit where credit is due. You have to say, that part of the music was by Scott, or that panel in my comic was drawn by Rim, or whatever.
Now, non-commercial is another option you can add, and it basically says what you might think. You can't use this work in a commercial capacity, which actually is not entirely clear-cut. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what the line is between commercial and non-commercial.
There is some debate as to exactly what would be commercial and what would not be commercial. I mean, if I made a song, right, obviously, if you take that song, burn it to a CD, and sell the CD, that's obviously commercial. If I make a movie and you sell tickets to see the movie, that's obviously commercial.
All right, but let's say, I make a song and you put it on your website for free. All right, that's non-commercial. You put it on your website for free, but your website happens to include ads unrelated. That's a little gray. Let's say you put it on your website and you have to watch an ad to download it. That's real close to being over the line, if not already over.
I'm pretty sure that's over the line. Now, here's a really sketchy one, all right? You make a podcast. Your podcast, you make money from it because you have a sponsor who, every episode you have a sponsor and it costs like $20 to sponsor an episode. Now you want to take like 10 minutes of Geeknights and put it in your podcast. Ooh, that's kind of, is that commercial or not? I don't know.
See, I wouldn't worry about that one because that sort of situation is covered by the share alike and no derivatives options.
That is true.
But that's it. And the thing is, this is one of the biggest myths about Creative Commons that I hear repeated constantly. It annoys me. People always argue, don't use the non-commercial because it'll fuck you because no one can use it in their Google AdSense, blah, 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 and no one will use your thing. And people always seem to be under this misapprehension that if you use a Creative Commons restriction, that there's no way anyone can use your work in that capacity. And the truth is, you can just ask the content creator.
Yeah, Creative Commons is basically saying, don't ask me if you follow these rules. If you want to break the rules, you can ask. That's the default. That's the way it would be without Creative Commons. If there were no Creative Commons, you'd have to ask for everything. So Creative Commons just says, you don't have to ask for these things, but you do have to ask for these things.
So I think the next one that actually I find this one interesting because it's viral is the share alike clause.
Right. Now, the share alike thing is tricky. I'm going to explain. The share alike is basically sort of taken from the GPL because, if let's say you make...
The new public license.
Yes, the GNU public license. If you make software with a GPL, like Linux or Emacs or whatever, and you say give that software out, right? If someone modifies that software, then the modifications they make also have to be GPL. So, for example, if we did not have the share alike, right? Somebody could take Geeknights. They're allowed to share it with their friends. They give us credit. They don't sell it, but they give it to their friends, right? But they could say give it to their friends with a BSD license or something. Or they could say make a remix of Geeknights, right? But the remix of Geeknights, they could distribute under some other kind of an Apache license.
Think of this. If we didn't have non-commercial, then theoretically, they could take Geeknights, remix it, put it on a CD, and sell it, and we would not have the right to take the remix back and use it.
Yep, because basically share alike says, if you want to make a remix of this, right, or a derivative work, then your derivative work also has to be Creative Commons or similar, similar enough to our license.
It pretty much means the license you distribute it under has to at least be as set up, like as good, as free as the one I distributed under. So you can go more free, but you can't go less free.
Yep. And it basically prevents, the non-commercial from being kind of silly. Because if you say, okay, you can't, take this and if you say attribution non-commercial, right? Someone can't just take your podcast and sell it, or your book and just sell it. But they could take your book, remix it, and sell the remix. So share alike says, all right, if you want to remix this or something.
Well, I don't know. It'd be tricky if they could. I mean, I don't know exactly if they could sell it.
Yeah, it's kind of sketchy, but share alike basically.
But what they could do is make a really weird thing about with your music, and then you wouldn't have the right to take it back and use it for something else.
Yep. And
people tend to use the two in tandem, the two options, so it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't. The other point of share alike is that it sort of spreads the Creative Commons love, because people are all remixing cool Creative Commons stuff, and then it sort of forces them to also Creative Commons their stuff, and then people use that and Creative Commons that, and it spreads the love all around until, hopefully.
Hence, I said it was viral.
Yep. And all the art in the whole world, if it keeps being remixes of one another, will eventually all be Creative Commons and cool, no matter what the copyright law is.
Now, another one that some people use, particularly commercial works, is the no derivatives option.
The thing with the no derivatives option is pretty simple. Don't remix this.
Yeah, don't alter it. Like, if we use the no derivatives, you could spread Geeknights around, give it to friends, do whatever you wanted in terms of giving it to people, but you couldn't modify it in any way. You'd have to give the exact file that we gave out.
Yeah, you couldn't, add, a little bumper to the beginning of it. You couldn't add audio to the end of it. You couldn't cut out, a single second of Geeknights and distribute, the shortened version. You couldn't re-encode Geeknights into a smaller MP3 and give that out because you've modified the work. I guess technically.
Yeah. One podcast two podcasts that use this are Escape Pod and Pseudopod, because they tell stories from a commercial market, but they release their podcast, which has these stories in them, under a no derivatives license. So you can share the stories in their completeness, but you can't use bits and pieces from the stories or these readings and other projects.
Yep. I think that's definitely a good license for them.
Yes.
Now, the hard part is choosing which license is right for you. And you know what? It totally depends on what you're doing. And the website, the Creative Commons website, really helps you out in picking which one. And you can use almost any combination of the four things we have talked about. You can have an attribution share alike. You can have an attribution no derivatives. You can have a attribution non-commercial no derivatives. You can do all sorts of different crazy stuff. And it's totally up to you, whatever works best for what you're doing. Now, they have some other licenses that are special that you're probably not going to use because they're mostly for special cases.
Well, like the developing nations.
The developing nations one is very interesting. Now, the way the world works, right, is that if you are already a developed nation, like the United States, right, intellectual property law helps you because you are generating a lot of copyrighted works and you want to make a lot of money off of them. So you don't want people pirating them. But if you're a poor country, right, and you're not generating a lot, you don't have research scientists or lots of, musicians and things, and you're mostly, getting your, copyrighted works from other places in the world, you're importing books and importing movies and such. Copyright law sort of sucks for your country because it makes it, you can't afford to get all these works of art and you're not producing that many, and your country really can't get ahead in the world because the copyright law is holding you down. And you can see a lot of countries, look at China, pirating like crazy, and that helped them get way up there. China's moving along. It's not great, but it's moving along. Well, largely due to piracy.
Yeah,
especially of software.
In the race between India and China to join the super industrialized world, I think China's got a leg up.
They do. But notice, as China gets closer and closer to having their leg all the way up, they start putting on the intellectual property because they start, realizing, hey, we've pirated so many copies of Windows to get where we are, but now it would be better off for us because we have money now to actually not let people pirate Windows, so maybe Microsoft China can make some money. And the developing nations license is sort of like a recognition of this problem. One thing I know that was licensed this way was Cory Doctorow's books, at least one or two of them. And the way it works is you make a book, say, and you put the developing nations license on there. I'm not going to get into all the details, but basically, the book is not free in some place like the United States. But the book is totally free in the Congo. So that way, developing nations who need more works of art and, can't really afford, and they need to get ahead in the world, can freely access and distribute your art. but places where people aren't poor and they have plenty of money to buy books have to buy your book, and they can't just be sharing it. And it's pretty cool. I don't think it it doesn't apply to too many works of art, but it applies to quite a few, and I think it's really interesting. You want to go over the other ones?
Not too much.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore anyone. Plus, remember, and we should probably say this and stress it very much, we know jack and shit about laws, and we are not lawyers.
Yep. I think there's one that basically says, I'm going to follow the copyright law, the founder's copyright one, which says, I'm going to follow the original copyright law of the United States, the founder's copyright.
I like that one just for...
So it says, yeah, I'm going to do, this is copyrighted in full, but 14 or 28 years from now, it's going to be public domain. Instead of, 90 years after you die, something like that, 75 years after you die.
I don't even know anymore.
Yeah. So it basically says this is copyrighted and for real, the whole thing. You can't do anything with it without permission. But 14 years from now, you'll be able to do whatever you want with no restrictions at all. That's the way it was back in the 1800s.
Yeah, but anyway, to sum up, we're not lawyers. That was just, we were trying to explain this mostly because a lot of people ask us to use Geeknights all the time. And the answer is, it's all Creative Commons. Just look at our license and follow those rules.
Yes, you only have to follow 3 rules. You have to say it was Geeknights and give us credit. You can't make any money by using it. You don't want someone else getting rich off Geeknights before we do. And if you're gonna, share it with people, you gotta share it with the coolness. You can't be sharing it with the assholeness. And that's it. No one should ask me permission unless they want to break one of these rules.
Granted, we're pretty open to that.
If you ask permission, I'll probably say yes, depending on what you're doing.
There's very little someone could say they want to do with our show that we would say no to.
It's just if you're doing something that breaks these rules, I just want to know.
Nah.
I don't want you doing it without asking. So yeah, anyone who has failed to understand the Creative Commons, thanks to our very terse, I guess
possibly inaccurate
discussion that we have at the end of every episode. If that's not enough for you, you should understand now. And if you don't understand now, you can go to the creativecommons.org website, and then you will fully understand.
If you still don't understand, I guess just email Lawrence Lessig.
He's not doing that anymore.
Yeah, he could probably still give you an earful.
Maybe.
I don't think he would, though. He's got better things to do.
Well, he's working on fighting corruption instead of copyright now. And I guess Joy Ito is in charge of the Creative Commons now, which is he's also a good guy. But yeah, you can watch plenty of videos of Lawrence Lessig on YouTube that are Creative Commons licensed, explaining the Creative Commons license.
He's a pretty fascinating guy. I'd recommend you learn about him.
Yeah, Lawrence Lessig is a really awesome lawyer guy. He's like a lawyer hero.
All right, and one final note, I think we're done for tonight, but I'd just like to warn everyone that the beta of Team Fortress 2 comes out next week. I hope Geeknights will still be around.
It is in your best interest to petition Valve to have this game, destroyed, because otherwise it is likely this game will destroy Geeknights. So you have to decide between Team Fortress 2 and Geeknights that might be the case.
Tell you what, Scott, I'll quit my job. And you can support me while I play this game.
No.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Odeo on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.